Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Hayden Lee. I'm a Master Certified Executive Life Coach and Leadership Coach. And I'm also an Enneagram enthusiast, Enneagram specialist, and accredited Enneagram practitioner and faculty member at an Enneagram institution. And I'm so happy today to be talking about the idea of from vice to virtue, which, of course, all the Enneagram types have a vice, which is really this fixation of these distorted beliefs that we may have that keep us in this negative cycle of default patterns of behaviors and thinking and feeling. And then there's the idea of the virtue. Each type has a virtue, where the virtue is really a guiding post or a guiding light to work toward that will help set us free or help liberate us from our limiting beliefs and limiting patterns of our type. The virtue really is something to work towards that will really help us be more of our true self, our more authentic self, our more whole self. So as a reminder, folks, the Enneagram, it's a system of motivation and development where there's 9 types of the Enneagram. And the Enneagram is a system of development where it's really a roadmap to help us understand our motivation. And from that point, to use it as a system of learning how to embrace the other 9 types and using the Enneagram really as a map to grow into our best self. And I always like to remind people Enneagram is about motivation, not behavior. Each type has a core motivation that drives their thinking and feeling and acting. And how they behave. We don't really know why people behave the way they do until you understand the Enneagram type helps us understand why we do what we do. But with that said, I'm so excited today to be exploring from vice to virtue for Enneagram type 4s, where Enneagram type 4, the core motivation of the 4 is really to the need to be authentic and unique, right? That's what drives their behavior, the need for also deep connection, the need for authenticity and expression, creative expression. So today we are going to meet an awesome Enneagram 4. I want to introduce you to my friend Garrison Cohen. So welcome, Garrison.
Hey, Hayden.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, let's see. So I seem to associate pretty big with the 4. I'm definitely a 4, the whole individual and unique, and it's like, wow. Um, but I love my work in the world. I work with thought leaders, business leaders, visionaries, and I've got a real talent for interviewing them, taking notes, and then creating messages for them that have them say, wow, you just spoke to what I've always felt in my heart, and I never knew that I could actually put into words. And so it's a real joy for me of bringing what's so unique and beautiful about these people and creating an expression for it in the world so that they can like ride on the waves,
Yeah.
of these amazing messages that let their people really know who they are.
Yeah. That's awesome. I just realized too, like the wonderful work that you do. It's like you're able to draw out what's unique and authentic in every individual, right? Because you use your fourness to actually bring out the four in others in a way, in a sense of,
Yeah,
yeah, which is
that
wonderful.
makes sense.
Well, ultimately, right, the Enneagram, all the 9 types are in us. We just happen to have one that is, more dominant than the other 8 types. But we all have a 4 in us. So it's cool that you, as a strong 4, can pull out the 4 in others. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's well put. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, today we're talking about from vice to virtue, right? So the vice, like I said, is a way of distorted thinking or a way that gets us in trouble sometimes or gets us stuck in these patterns of thinking that may not serve us, or patterns of feeling that may not serve us, or behaviors that may not serve us. So Garrison, the type 4, the vice is envy, right? Envy in terms of comparison to others, focusing on how others maybe have something that you're missing, so longing to have something that everyone else seems to have that you never have. So tell us a little bit about how the vice of envy shows up for you.
Oh man. Um, there is the kind of like this constant sense, and it's interesting because I check it sometimes and I ask myself, wait, is that really true? But it looks like, I guess my whole life there's been this sense of other people have it easier, other people understand this better, other people have this thing or this experience or this ability that I don't have. Um, and there's sort of like always, there's always sort of like this underlying subcarrier wave
Mm.
of um, I don't have the things that I need to really be able to do the things that I want. And simultaneously, I don't know that that's necessarily true, but it seems to always kind of like go back to that particular feeling.
Yeah. I love how you made the distinction between it may or may not be true, but that's how it feels,
Yeah.
right? Where the four is in the feeling center. The four is in the feeling center of the Enneagram, like lots of feels that the four has. So, what's it like to feel like everyone has it and you don't? Whether or not that's true or not is not the point, but what's it like to feel that way?
Um, I can already hear the words coming. Feels lonely, separate, um, isolating, um, kind of cut off.
Yeah.
Those would be a few of the words come to mind. Yeah.
What's coming up for me in this moment, like as you share those feelings, I'm not a four, right? So I feel for you in the sense that like I don't want you to feel that way, but at the same token, though, I know fours are comfortable though in the feelings of discomfort, right? Are comfortable in the feelings of. Does that make sense? What I'm saying a little bit that fours
Yeah.
aren't necessary, like aren't don't shy away from feelings of negativity or longing or even suffering, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that it's a little bit of a concern for me because I don't want to take um, comfort in creating the circumstances or events to have those feelings.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like I think there's a fine line where it's sort of like, okay, I can have those feelings and be with them versus I can subconsciously seek out to create circumstances for myself where I will be brought back to those
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I think that's the danger of the vice, that the vice of each the type could end up being a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, right? So the idea of the four's envy of something's always missing, where this idea of other people can find happiness, but I can't, or other people will find fulfillment that I can't, right? Um, so how do you think that becomes dangerous for the four, where it could possibly become a self-fulfilling prophecy that everything you find is missing ends up being missing in your life? Yeah.
How could it become self-fulfilling prophecy? Well, very simply is the answer. Um, I think I think for the four, especially for me, it's being really vigilant around, okay, am I just doing my four thing? Or am I actually seeking out evidence of these things because I'm just so caught in my own thinking process
Yeah.
and manifesting that.
Yeah. Yeah. From an intellectual level, it's like I don't, like I said, I'm not a four, so I can't feel as deeply as you feel as a four because you feel as a four. But intellectually, though, what's coming up for me is like I can also see the cycle of the four of like wanting to be unique, but also wanting to be understood, but then also taking almost pride in being misunderstood because that's what makes you unique. So it's like seeking understanding, but also not wanting to be misunderstood. So can you tell us a little bit about that kind of struggle of like well, even envy? It's like wanting something, but not really wanting it, or wishing that I had what others have, but not too much of it because then I would be just like them. So
Yeah,
does that make sense what I'm saying?
it does, and it's a confusing edge because I one of my love languages is I think my highest love language is quality time, and within quality time is deep listening, and within deep listening is deep understanding. And my under what I get about my type is that we so deeply want to be understood. But like you said, if we were understood, then we wouldn't be unique. And I don't know if I can say I've had the experience where I felt so understood that I was upset because now I felt understood, but I didn't feel special at all. And I wonder if that's something that I kind of like avoid. It's like understand me just enough to have rapport, but not so much that I don't feel special anymore. And that's kind of like a real kind of like a gray zone for me of like, wow, what happens in that space?
Yeah. Well, what happened in that space?
Um, I mean, I'm trying to recall a time or a circumstance where I felt someone really, truly, deeply got me. Well, I mean, it's funny because we had spoken about this. I remember I had a therapist who was the best therapist I'd ever had. It was almost as if he had gone to graduate school and gotten a degree in Garrison. And he was the one who had said to me, one of the best things you could ever do for yourself is just accept that you're just a bozo on the bus, which at first seemed horrifying and then kind of made sense in a way that still feels odd
Yeah.
for me to imagine, and yet I can get that.
Yeah.
I don't
You
know
have
that.
shared that with me before, and I love that term and I love that image and I love how it applies to you and fours, which is a good segue to the virtue of the four, right? Whereas the virtue is this like thing to strive for, or this idea to remember that will help liberate you from your vice and will actually help move you closer to your whole self, your authentic self, your true self. And the virtue of the four is equanimity, right? Equanimity in terms of emotions or qualities in you, meaning like, well, your negative qualities are equal to your positive ones. You need to remember that you have just as many positives as negatives, and also the equanimity of being able to, like I said, gauge all emotions equally, to gauge all your qualities equally, but also you're just a bozo on the bus, just like every single other bozo on planet Earth. And I love how you said it's horrifying, but at the same, because that's like the worst nightmare for a four to be like, you're original, or you're so what's the word? Not original. What's the opposite of original? Ordinary. You're just
Ordinary,
you're ordinary. Like, wouldn't that be
even
horrible?
even even extraordinary.
Yeah.
I'm not even just ordinary. I'm extraordinary.
Yeah. you know so yeah, so how the idea of equanimity of emotions, equanimity of your qualities, remembering both positive and negative, and equanimity that you're just like every other bozo on the bus. How's that going to help you? How will that help? How's it a virtue for you?
Yeah, I mean, the other side of it is that I I do notice that I have this enormous capacity to um, to hold feelings and sensations um, that are like oftentimes overwhelming. Like people would rarely people often say I'm unflappable, um, but that's just what it looks like on the outside. On the inside, it can be just this whole ocean of just chaos and energy and movement and angst. Um, but on the surface, I seem very um, equanimous because I'm just sort of like surrendering to being with,
Yeah.
letting go to all of those feelings, and that's just because I've learned over time that that's my personal best approach to dealing with all of the emotional intensity of being a four.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What would it be like if because you said you're pretty adept at the outside being able to like appear equanimous, right? It's hard to say. But what if your insides were also equanimous and it matched your outsides? What would that be like?
Yeah, it's great. That would rock. That would rock. And I think I have that experience at times. Um, maybe even most of the time, actually. Maybe I'm just speaking about it now because I'm feeling a little bit of tension and anxiety today. So that's what I'm most present to. But I do think that there is a fair amount of time where I do feel
Yeah.
pretty even keel inside as well. I'd like to get better and better at it,
Well, I
deeper
think
and
it's
deeper
a
levels.
skill set. It's a thing to practice. Because one definition of equanimity, it is that mental calmness. It is that calmness inside and outside.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what's possible from that place of equanimity?
I mean, what's not possible from that place of equanimity? You know, I would think, I would think, given that equanimity is my virtue, I should be able to make that the engine of my car
Mm,
and move as fast or as far as I want. Um, and yet I notice that I feel held back, in places maybe by my own ego or you know different like limiting beliefs or self doubts that I still have yet to shed. But I would think with equanimity, you could do pretty much anything you wanted to do. I would think.
yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I think emotions are important, obviously, it's part of the human experience, but I know fours can have really intense emotions, right? Or feel so deeply that it can be overwhelming or overcome them. And the idea of equanimity to me also is like almost really getting good at the skill set of emotional management, right? Or emotional regulation. It's really being able to acknowledge the emotion, but then also being able to see it from, in an analytical point of view, or to be really clear-headed about what is this emotion and what can I do with it to continue to move forward or to, to be productive, and to come from a place of not feeling like if there's something wrong with you, or not feeling that you're flawed, right? It's normal to have this emotion, and what I want to do about it versus what's wrong with me, or I'm deeply flawed, or something's missing that I'm never going to attain, right? Because also equanimity is remembering all the positive qualities about you too, that they're just as important to balance out the negative ones. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 totally.
So when you're finding yourself, Garrison, stuck in the vice of envy, how can you remember, or how can you move from vice of envy to equanimity, the virtue?
Wait, how can I move from okay? How can I move from the vice of envy to the virtue of
Equanimity, yeah.
equanimity?
How can you move from envy to equanimity? Yeah.
I mean, what would make sense to me is bringing equanimity to envy. I think it's really just about catching it in the moment because it's so easy to go on autopilot for these things and get kind of hijacked. But if I'm feeling envy, then I think maybe my best approach would be to um, there's the feelings of envy and then there's the thoughts of envy. And I think if I'm getting caught in the thoughts of envy, that means that it's because I'm having feelings that are informing it. If I can go to those feelings and really, really be with them to the point where they have no grip on me, then perhaps there would be a more of a relief from that.
Reminds me of some neuroscience too. I mean, in neuroscience, I'm learning about name it to tame it, which is when you name an emotion, you actually tame the emotion, right? To name it
Okay.
and to speak it.
Yeah.
So is that in alignment with what you're sharing?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's a great phrase. Name it to tame it.
Yeah.
Really good.
Cool. So then when you are able to identify the feeling of envy, what would be the next step to then move closer to equanimity? So we want to identify the feeling, and then what?
Can you say that one more time, please?
Once we've identified the feeling of envy, right, and you name it, right, we name it to tame it, is there a next step, or is that already your step to reach equanimity, or is there a next step for you after identifying the feeling of envy? Then is there something you could do, or a next step to move closer to equanimity? Or yeah, that's the question.
Yeah. I'm reminded of a story of a friend of mine. Uh, Hopefully this is PG-13 enough for your audience. Um, this friend of mine was telling me that he was at Burning Man one year, and he had done lots of little doses of different things over the course of a night, and nothing really seemed to like show up. And then all of a sudden, late, it all hit him at once. And there he is in a porta potty, you know, feeling terrible, leaned over with his head against the wall, just like, oh man. And he told me about how he found himself, instead of berating himself or putting himself down or trying to ignore it, he just found himself as if he was holding himself, saying, it's like, okay, I got you. We're going to make it through. You're going to be just fine. I'm right here with you. I'm not going away. I got you. And it's like, it's that same kind of mentality that really speaks to me, of really holding and loving myself, almost as if I'm the parent for the child that is having those feelings. um, I think, when I heard that story, it impacted me in a way that really never left. And I think that speaks to when I'm at my best
Yeah.
around really, really caring for my process.
Yeah. So if you were to imagine you holding yourself
Yeah.
when you're in those feelings, what would you say to yourself?
It wouldn't be all that different. It would be something like, I I feel you. I'm right here with you. You're good. I got you. We're going to make this through together. I know you're having these feelings. Um, you know, this isn't necessarily truth, but what is true is that I'm right here with you right now and you are okay. I got you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's powerful, and definitely like moving closer to the mental calmness, right? To calm the emotions, to have more an equal balance of positive and negative, right? Because usually when you're in the space of envy, it's like feels not very good. But then you comforting yourself in a way is being able to. And what's interesting though, it is that balance of kind of positive and negative, or light and dark, which is within you, right? Like we all have the light and dark within us. And equanimity is also remembering that your light is just as strong as your dark. Whereas
Mhm.
sometimes the fours kind of have a preference, for the dark. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Garrison. Any final words you'd like to share on this idea of vice to virtue for you?
Well, I mean, I can't think of any other reason why we're here in physical form, on the planet, than to go from our vices to our virtues in this life.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I think that's why we're here, and for that reason, it all comes down to relationship with ourselves. Like, this entire journey is all about relationship with ourselves, and relationship with others is just an aspect of relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's the most worthy journey I know of.
And that's the most existential for answer I've ever had on this call. So thank you
Boom.
for that.
Leader of the fours.
You get the unique a unique award.
Look at
That's
me.
awesome.
I'm unique.
A very deep existential meaning of life type of answer. And I wouldn't expect anything less from a 4. So thank you. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Hayden Lee Coaching. You can also check out my website, haydenlee.com. That's HAYDENLEE.com. And you can check out the Enneagram group. I run Enneagram group coachings. Then there's more information at my website, haydenlee.com. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Have a wonderful day. And thank you again, Garrison, for joining us today. And have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Bye, everybody.